when a sponsor signs on board and we match them up to an orphan, then it's typically for many, many years. So most of our sponsors have been with us for 10, 12, 15 years. Some sponsorships tail off, and then we try to find recruit another sponsor for the child, or if they're close to 17 or 18 years old, then we just support them out of society money. But the intention here again is to also let them know that someone out there cares enough to, on a regular basis, on a long-term basis, provide financial assistance. And the costs to a sponsor are $20 a month. We started at $15 a month back in the 90s, about 3 years ago. We increased the stipend to $20 a month. So it's $240 a year, and they receive that in two pieces, $120 and $120. Many of our sponsors provide additional gifts, $50 for a birthday or a Christmas present or something of that sort, and we convey that. All of the money that a sponsor contributes to an orphan gets to the orphan. All of our administrative expenses come from separate collections, either from donors, or we'll do a mailing, or someone at a wedding or a wake or a funeral will designate us as a recipient organization, and that's how we cover administrative expenses. Now, in addition to stipends, we've run summer camp programs. Now, it turns out that part of the benefits that orphans are supposed to get from the state are access to summer camps, free summer camps, for a week per year. We set up camps to provide some educational and cultural enhancements for them, especially in the early 90s when the school systems were in transition and they weren't getting a sufficient amount of history and cultural exposure from a Ukrainian perspective rather than Soviet. So we enhanced that with these summer camps, and where we would process or teach anywhere from 20 to 40 orphans from 2 to 3 weeks at a time. We've cut back on those because at this point, 20 years into independence, or nearly 20 years, there's much more of that ongoing in the schools today. Their friends, people that they interact with, tend to be more imbued with the Ukrainian identity, so they're better use for the funds. But there are parts of Ukraine where that's still a handy thing to do, and we're cooperating and working with other organizations, Caritas, for example, in Drohobych, that runs a community facility for about 100 mostly social orphans, but some full orphans as well. And so we've been working with them as a more efficient way of reaching out to orphans than us actually organizing a camp from the ground up. We provide educational assistance. Our stipends, we ensure the kids with coverage until they're about 17 or 18 years old, depending on when they finish their their secondary education. At that point, they decide whether to go on to university or vocational school or just go out into the workplace, as Alla mentioned in her presentation. Our statistics are not too different from what you quoted generally, which kind of leads me to wonder whether the general population as a whole doesn't reflect those numbers as well. About a third of our orphans try to get into the job market right away and basically drop out at age 17, 18. Probably about half, and these aren't hard numbers, these are just inferences based on the age distributions of the kids still in the program, go on to some kind of vocational school. So that keeps them in another 1 or 2 years. As long as they're continuing their education, we keep supplying the stipends. So it provides both an inducement to stay in, as well as a bit extra income to provide the necessities for going to school. And probably about 20% go on to university, which is a pretty good statistic. And that can be a pretty protracted experience. I mean, we've had some hangers-on at age 27, 28 that we basically forcibly cut off. Our bylaws basically require by age 23, they're out of the system. They're on their own. And we've been neglectful on that in the past, but in the last couple of years, we've sort of started to cut them off. We need to stay focused on the lower end of the intake stream rather than the high end. So that statistical distribution is not too far. Some of our sponsors stay with their orphans all the way through. Many have provided scholarships to see them through university, $700, $800, which is significantly above the stipend, the $240 a year. $700, $800 a year, sometimes $1,500. Medical school's expensive, lawyers. But it also reflects the success rate that we've had in channeling these kids into a better life by keeping them in the home environment. And we don't take credit for the university. That comes out of the home. The guardians, the single parent that stayed with them. But we like to think that we've contributed to the success in that respect. We also send over clothing and packages, donations, basically from people that know Mary Yovik and know that she does that. We pay for the shipping. Folks donate clothing, goods, and other materials. We've provided emergency assistance, medical assistance, working with Gift of Life. Brought some of the orphans over here to the States for operations. And then there have been instances where someone's apartment burns down. We've given them financial assistance to get relocated into a new apartment. In the past, we've bought 600 pairs of winter boots for kids. There was a factory clearance that we heard of. Their boots were cheap, so we went out and we bought these kids boots. Last year, when the floods hit, we sent over $6,000 for distribution, targeted distribution, in 3 oblasts where our coordinators found needy families with orphans so that they got big support in a targeted way. Today, we've got about 500 orphans directly in our care. Down from 650 about 4 or 5 years ago. They're aging out, and we've got to bring in new orphans in the 6, 7, 8-year-old age group, so our coordinators are out recruiting. At the same time, we've lost sponsors. The high point, we had 450, 460 sponsors. Today, we're down to around 300. Some of our sponsors carry 5, 7 orphans, as many as 10. We limit the maximum to 10. We had sponsors with more than 10 in the past, but when they drop their sponsorship, it's a big hit on us. So for administrative purposes and the humanitarian side of it, we limit sponsorship to 10. So we've got 3 or 4 that carry 10 orphans and have carried 10 orphans for years. So there are some awfully generous people out there in the diaspora, and we're grateful for that. On average, we average about 2 orphans, 1.5 to 2 orphans per sponsor. So that adds up to 450. We're constantly looking for new sponsors. It's not an easy thing. This is not like going on a website and asking for donations, because the relationship, this is a long-term relationship. One-time sponsor for one orphan for 1 year is disruptive to the orphan and very difficult for the whole organization, because then you've got to find a new sponsor. That turnover in sponsors is not good for us. So we make sure when a sponsor comes in that they understand that this could be a longer-term commitment. We don't do adoptions. We're not at all involved with that. That's a whole different institutional process. But for those folks that are looking for direct contact with a very needy element in Ukrainian society, we provide that bridge. So it's a social safety net, entirely privately operated on both sides in Ukraine and over here.